Allison Rosen. Allison Rosen is your new best friend. Allison, with her good times never end. Allison Rosen, doing the wavy pencil dance again. Allison Rosen. Allison's your new best friend.
Hey everyone, hi, hello. Welcome to another exciting episode of Allison Rosen is Your New Best Friend. I'm sitting here in the studio on an unseasonably wintry, stormy day where there's something called an atmospheric river storm. Two people have already weaseled out of an in-person show this week. And when I say weasel, I mean it in all caps. Hi, Tony.
Hi.
Did I not fucking call their weaselation?
You did.
They weaseled on out.
You
I'm not
texted
afraid.
me to call them weasels.
I did. And then you're like, yeah, it's crazy this week. And I just said, no, that's when I went to all caps weasels. So I was like, don't you take their side.
Yeah. Look, I was just trying to play the middleman,
I know. That's my least favorite quality of yours anyway.
One of.
What's my other one?
Too many to mention. You have a guest here.
I'm just waiting to be, announced as a non-weasel who did show up.
Brave, courageous non-weasel joining us today. She is an author. She is a mother. She is a musician. And she has written the New York Times best-selling buzzy tome, More, a Memoir of Open Marriage. Please put your hands together for Molly Roden Winter.
Oh, thank you so much.
You didn't
having me.
Thank you so much for coming. And you didn't even try a soft. You didn't even weaselly test the weasel waters by being like, "Hey, is there any? How would you?
In fact, I happily rescheduled.
Right,
if
because
you recall.
we were supposed to do it at 1 before two weasels stuck their weaselly heads out of the ground like groundhogs.
Yeah, that's right. And so here I am, and I even took an Uber. I didn't even have my own car, and I used an umbrella, and I made it.
Were you worried, though? At any point were you like, oh no, she's scheduling to 4, that might be in the high of the eye of the atmospheric river, or whatever that is?
I feel like in 3 days, I've kind of taken on the LA reaction to rain, and now I'm kind of terrified of it too, but somehow I've braved it, and I don't know how I'm going to adapt to walking in the elements back in Brooklyn.
Well, that's the thing is that, and Tony and I were talking about this before, I was not worried about it at all. When Weasel One emailed me, I hope they don't hear this, guys. I love you. Emailed me.
Well, they won't identify themselves as weasels. People always think that's kind of the key in my book too.
Right.
Nobody's actually going to recognize themselves.
Exactly.
Because they're like, oh God, what a horrible, horrible person. And
I can't believe she dated that guy and then me.
Yeah. Right.
That loser. Right. So I didn't even know what she was talking about with her concern. And then I looked at the news and I'm like, oh, it is being presented as apocalyptic.
Right.
But it doesn't feel that way. It just feels like a little drizzle. Now, who knows? By the time you hear this whole studio might have washed away.
I mean, it's a deluge. That's what they're calling it. A deluge. You don't hear that word every day.
No. And I feel, how I don't know how on TikTok Gen Z you are.
My kids are Gen Z, so I'm Gen Z adjacent. But I feel like that makes me extremely not Gen Z when I say my kids are Gen Z.
Right. Well,
I know some Gen Z people.
Do they say Delulu? Have you seen that for deluded? Delulu is fun deluded. And I feel like there's got to be a way to combine Delulu and deluge.
I'm going to work on it. And it's one of my favorite ways to torture my younger son is to co-opt lingo and then use it really incorrectly.
Oh, yeah. Do you have an example?
Well, I was trying to I kept saying dab, but dab. I was never sure how to say it. And then I would do it in a way that was just wrong. But I would do it very publicly in the streets of Brooklyn. And he loves that. He loves that when I do that.
Did he say, miss me with that noise, Mom? Okay, so your book, the huge response, very zeitgeisty.
Crazy. I don't know quite what happened because it's not like I'm the first person in an open marriage ever. But I will say I wrote the book in part because I was not seeing any stories like mine. I was not hearing a truthful telling of what it's like to open a marriage when you also have children. Most of what I was seeing were either childless people or fictional characters. That's a big one, right? And I'm getting compared in certain publications to like, you know, polyamory, like Shiv on Succession.
Oh.
Or, you know, but I'm like, she just asked for an open marriage and then Tom said no. You know what I mean?
Think of her as I didn't think of her as polyamorous.
I don't know. There's been 2 articles where I've gotten like lumped in with Shiv, which
That's
I find
so interesting.
Like, I'm like, she doesn't exist. You know what I mean? I'm like, but I think because my story is resonating in some way. And that's exciting because your hope always, especially when you write memoir, is that your story will resonate with other people. And I feel like when you write as honestly as you possibly can, you get closer to the universal human experience.
Do you think people are relating to the open marriage part or relating to you as someone sort of striving to figure out who you are?
Yeah, I mean, the latter. I think just population-wise, I think there are a lot more mothers than there are mothers in open marriage, right?
Right.
So I'm getting messages from both, but lots of moms who are saying, you are making me feel seen in terms of just like the ambivalence I've felt around motherhood or the way in which I have felt like I needed to find some freedom for myself. Just giving ourselves permission as mothers, I think, to be whole people,
right,
is the main message I have in my book. I mean, among others, but my hope is not, people are joking as they read this. They're like, oh, this is not actually a manifesto. Like, if you read my book, you might be less likely to have an open marriage because it's really hard.
Sad at times.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I was sad at times. I mean, but monogamy is sad at times too, to
Life
be fair.
is sad. Yeah,
Life is sad. Being a human is sad.
Right.
So any story that...
No, it was a real like warts and all.
Yeah.
Telling of the reality of dealing with that many people. I was just like, I'm exhausted.
I know.
I'm exhausted by how many people she has to deal with.
I know. And, you know, to be fair, I was exhausted before we opened our marriage. You know, my youngest, like, never napped. So I was exhausted. And I just I chose to be exhausted somewhere else some of the time. But I was still, it wasn't like I was, you know, having this restful, blissful, you know, experience. And then I just blew it up. I was already feeling like I was, speak of Eye of the Storm. I felt like my life had become so chaotic and I had no sense of who I was that this didn't come to me as like an idea for, oh, I know how I'm going to get in touch with myself. The whole way it happened was kind of chaotic. And it's been more in the retelling of this story that I've made more sense of how I got from point A to point B, because the story spans 10 years and the book ends 6 years ago. So I wanted to tell the story of how I went from, you know, lost to finding myself ultimately. And for me, open marriage was the path I took. I don't think it's the only path one can take, but I think there was something in that gave me the freedom and space to look at myself and to think, what do I want outside of marriage and motherhood that I hadn't really given myself that chance to think about?
And what did you find that it was that you wanted?
I think I needed to come home to myself. I needed to not outsource my happiness. I needed to take responsibility for my kind of what I was thinking of as my bad shadow self. We talk, you know, I'm hearing a lot more about the shadow in a lot of I think that's the next big movement in the zeitgeist. We're going to talk about our shadow self. And I think, you know, women's sexuality in particular, we're made to feel like it is both our value and the thing to be most ashamed of, and that we should shut it down when we are married. So when you have any kind of, I feel like the idea that sex is a way in to figure yourself out is real. I open the book with an Audre Lorde quote, which says, the erotic is the nurturer of all our deepest knowledge. And I think there's something to that we have to go into some of the places within ourselves that feel kind of forbidden in order to unlock some deeper truths.
Growing up, what did you think about monogamy?
I mean, I assumed my parents were monogamous. I found out when I was 28 that they were not. That's a spoiler for the book, but you find out pretty early. And I didn't really give it much thought. I mean, I don't think we're taught to think about it. I think it's the default setting for heterosexual people anyway. I think part of the reason that you see non-monogamy more frequently in, the queer community is that everything's a negotiation from the get-go. There's no like, this is the way
right.
It works. It's like, okay, if there's a same-sex marriage, it's not like the mom's going to stay home with the kids and the dad's going to go make the money. And I know in some ways we're moving away from that dynamic, but COVID, I think, showed a lot of women that dynamic still very much exists, that women are the caretakers. And but so I didn't question it. I didn't think about whether or not I was going to be monogamous. That wasn't like on my mind.
Right.
I don't even think I really would have thought about the word. I don't think I really knew. I didn't give it any thought.
So there's some things as I was reading the book that I was thinking or picking up on and wondering, am I picking up on stuff or is this baked? Like, did you as a writer put it in there for the reader to pick up on it? And I'll just give you an example of that.
Cool.
I suspect it's the latter because you're a really good good writer, and I think that the part of the book is a sort of a journey of self-awareness. And I feel like you clearly wrote it from a self-aware place, but at the beginning I was just like, she is very angry at her husband.
Yeah. I mean, I talk about my anger towards my husband in the book. There's one scene in couples therapy where I really let loose, and I think part of that anger, is bigger than our marriage. I think part of that anger is about the expectations that women also place on themselves because of what we're taught in our culture. So, my husband might have said, you don't like, we could get a babysitter, and I'm like, no, we can't, you know what I mean? I felt this, I put a lot of pressure on myself to be kind of the ideal mother and to make a kind of ideal home and to work. I was working full time for at least several of the years of my kids being little. So I think there was anger that this situation existed, and also anger at my husband that he could free himself, that, even going to working late was for him, it just felt so much freer than my life once we had kids.
Right.
But partly it was because he didn't feel guilty when he wasn't home and I did.
I just want to read just a short thing. Okay, so there's this guy that you meet near the beginning and you feel very drawn to, and your husband gives you permission to go. I don't know if permission's right. Permission.
No, I mean, I asked. Yeah. I asked because I did feel like I couldn't do this without my husband's okay. And we had talked about that in advance of getting married.
Right. So, okay. So you get a text from him, have fun tonight, baby. I'll be thinking about you. And then you say something about his message irritates me. Does he think this is all for him? Can you explain what was going on there? Yeah.
Well, I mean, my husband and I talked about the possibility. We didn't use the term open marriage when we got engaged in the 90s. Like, I don't know that we really knew that term. But he said to me before we got engaged, if you ever feel like you want to sleep with somebody else, you can. It's not a deal breaker for me. You just have to tell me about it. And there were a couple different aspects to that. One was that I think part of it was really for me because he had a lot of partners before we got married. He was 5 years older and just had a lot more years that were single. I had the same boyfriend for 4.5 years and then met him, so So
you also went to high school at 12 and college at 16.
Yeah,
So
I was
you were
really young. My sister had a baby when she was 19, when I was 16, and I think part of me was like terrified of sex too. So I put off sex as long as I could because it seemed like a scary thing that could end your life. I mean, not that my sister's life ended, but it felt scary. So my husband kind of felt like, there's no way you're going to be okay with only sleeping with me forever. But at the same time, it was an easy thing for him to offer to me in some ways because it kind of turned him on, the idea of me being with somebody else.
In that, like before you got married, when he said that, did you realize maybe this is something he's into?
Yeah, we had done, and I talk about it in the book kind of more in a flashbacky kind of way, but we had done like a few things that were like a couple trips to a sex club, a threesome with his ex-girlfriend who was bisexual, but none of it really worked for me in the same way that open marriage ended up working for me. And it took a while for me to figure out how I wanted to do it and what it was going to look like for me in a way that was going to feel good. But initially, when it was just kind of about the sex, that's not what I was really in it for, but I had it took a while for me to admit that to myself. I thought I was just like, oh yeah, I'm going to have sex and it's going to be great. But I wasn't having a good time with the casualness of it. What I really look for is connection. And so it took a long time for me to really figure that out. And at that moment, the part that you just read, I wasn't there yet, but I was starting to get a glimmer. I was like, whoa, I don't want him thinking about me. I want this to be for me. I want this to, I don't want to have to like report back on how this night went because that feels then, it like cheapened it somehow for me. So, it's not like all of those thoughts were fully formed in my mind at those times. I wrote the book in present tense after scrapping 4 or 5 drafts. Because I needed to get into that headspace of where I was at that time and not like overlay it with my, late 40s, early 50s sensibilities of, what I see now looking back on the story. You know what I mean?
I think I wondered, was any of it a fuck you to him?
Sure.
And then because he was so into it, you're like, whoa, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You think it was?
Yeah,
okay.
I think so. I think there were a lot of fuck yous being thrown back and forth between us for a while. And not in a way that's necessarily unhealthy even, I never really saw my parents fight. Stuart, my husband, did. His parents were fighters. My parents were not fighters. And it's an interesting thing. Like I am a big believer in fighting now, and I'd rather now say fuck you than do a fuck you act.
Right, then act it out.
Yeah, and so I think we now like often end our arguments with like a high five because we're like, damn, that was a good argument. Like we're getting so efficient with it. You spend years sometimes like having the same argument over and over and over again in kind of different forms without ever getting underneath what's there. And I feel like part of what happened with open marriage is and the ultimatum I ended up giving my husband, like, we've got to go to couples therapy or we're closing the marriage. And
it's so funny because other people will be like, we have to go to couples counseling or I'm out of here. You're like, we have to go to couples counseling or we're going to be super committed to each other.
Yeah, I know. Well, here's the thing. I really have never honestly, deeply wanted to leave my husband. I've always felt like he's my person and like we can grow together. But I felt like we were hitting these roadblocks with communication in the open marriage. And what it came down to was I was getting angry and upset about things he was doing, although I had given him permission to do those things.
Right. And so you're talking about you felt jealousy about the people that he was dating and the
jealousy and insecurity and how dare you make a date on Thursday, even though I also had a date on Thursday, but my guy canceled and now you should, it was like not all
and it's
logical.
So well written would be interesting to know if men could relate to it as much as as women who are reading it, because I certainly felt the gut punch, even though like I felt the gut punch of him having a date or him doing whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, it was very visceral.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that came through because that's what it felt like some of the time. But I knew we had to get some help if we were going to do this. And his argument was always like, when I said I wanted to close the marriage, he was like, Molly, you're going to change your mind. And he was right, because anytime I met someone new, I would. And I do feel like, and I was able to tell this, by looking at 10 years, and I'm several relationships beyond where the book ended, but my relationships got I got clearer with each relationship, I think, about what I was looking for. And it was less about the men than it was about my being kind of like becoming a sexual subject instead of a sexual object. My being able to voice, this is what I want, this is not what I want. And that clarity has grown. So Stuart was not wrong when he was like, you're going to change your mind. And it was true. Neither of us ever threatened divorce, because we've always said to, I think our marriage is better now than it ever has been. And we're 24 years in, and I think we went through these things not because we were not in love with each other, but because I know what I needed. I won't speak for him, although I do think there's some similarities in what he got out of it. I just needed space away from these roles of mother and wife to figure some things out. And I didn't want to blow up my marriage, but I didn't want to just go along with the open marriage in a way that didn't feel good either. You know what I mean? I didn't want to. And in some ways, I think we should have gone, I'm sure we should have gone to couples counseling no matter what. But that was like my way to get them. You know what I mean? It's like when you say to your husband, like, yeah, we can go to your parents for Thanksgiving, because deep down you're like, because we're going to my house for Christmas. You know what I mean? It's like we do that in marriage. It's a negotiation. And sometimes it's an above board negotiation. And sometimes you're doing a little bit of string pulling underneath. And I think that kind of, there was some mutual manipulation perhaps happening. And I was trying to be honest about that too, and not sugarcoat anything. But I think we're pretty darn straightforward with each other at this stage of the game.
Are you guys good at separately spending time alone?
Stuart has always been better at spending time alone than I have. I've had and that was part of what I had to get comfortable with. I was realizing that when he was on a date, and if I didn't have a date, especially as my kids got a little older and were a little more independent, I was feeling kind of like lost and angry with him for not being there. And I realized there's, Byron Katie.
Yes.
Yeah. The turnaround. Is it true? What's more true? And it was things like she has you do these turnarounds. So it was like, Stuart needs to spend more time with me. And then you test, I need to spend more time with Stuart. And I was like, no, that's not true. I need to spend more time with me. And I was like, whoa, that one's true. I need to spend more time with me. And so that's in the book, I start doing some other things. That's when I took up guitar and started singing, and when I started boxing, and just kind of being with myself in a way that with time that wasn't spoken for by someone else. With time that wasn't filling a need that someone else had. And it kind of took me getting to a low place with my jealousy and insecurity in my marriage to look at that and to really try to do something about it.
There are some relationships that you talk about in the book that are, would you say degrading is fair?
Yeah, I think so. But I would say kind of mutually degrading. I feel like it takes two to be degraded.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right.
So I can't lay it at the feet of someone else degrading me if I was allowing that to happen.
Maybe degrading is not the right word, but there's a couple, like Laurent.
Yeah.
And now I'm forgetting exactly what happened with Leo, but there's a few where it's just like, no, fuck these guys.
Yeah. No.
and I'm wondering, and I imagine some might be like composites, but of all of the various relationships you had, which do you have anger towards those guys? And also, like, which one do you feel like was the worst?
Laurent's the worst. Laurent's the worst, for sure. I don't have anger, though, because I feel like every single relationship I had taught me something, you know? And that was my mother's message to me throughout, was like, don't waste this opportunity to learn about yourself. You know, it's neither good nor bad. You can live your whole life in a safe little house, right? And never venture out and also never learn about yourself. You can live a dangerous life and do all sorts of crazy, self-destructive things and never learn about yourself. The goal is, no matter what you're doing, to pay attention. What does this mean for me? Why am I doing this? And how does it make me feel? And am I going to make some different choices moving forward? And that is what I think did happen. So I don't have regrets or anger. I feel glad that nothing dire happened, but you know, I'm also glad I've never been hit by a bus. You know what I mean? It's like, I live in New York.
We all share that.
Yeah, right. It's like people say, how could you do it? You know, it's so risky. But I feel like, again, life is risky. I was feeling like I was pretty into being risky at that time. I was tired of being safe. And it did work out in the end. But yeah, Laurent was pretty awful. I am still friends with, and you wouldn't guess this based on the way things went, but I have maintained a friendship of sorts with the Matt character.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
Right. He was one of the good ones, right?
Yeah.
And then also Scott, the one who got divorced at the end and wanted me to leave my husband.
Oh, yeah.
But I always did, you know, I loved him. He was one of the, you know, the first people that like, I really was like, I love you, but I also love my husband. And it was, for me, it was this heart expanding thing. And I think he is monogamous by nature. And not that people who are really, you know, born one or the other, but I think that's what he wants monogamy, and he wanted monogamy with me, but he's not, he's a sweetheart, you know, and we care about each other, and
Has he found someone else to become monogamous with?
Yes, and then no. You know what I mean? It means like he found somebody and then that ended too. Yeah.
It's interesting. He certainly came on strong.
Yeah, no, he absolutely did. And I think there was something about that. I talked about him as like putting me on a pedestal. And that's the way my husband had made me feel early in our relationship. And it's intoxicating. But then you realize, oh, you know, that has its limits. There's
it's a setup.
Yeah. And there's an immaturity to that kind of imbalance.
Well, so you mentioned The Ethical Slut.
Yeah.
Which I've never, do you know this book, Tony?
I've heard of it.
I have to tell you, I had this woman, Jade Catapretta, who's a comedian, on my show, and she had just come out as pansexual, right?
Huh.
I can't remember.
I think so.
I'll need a refresher on what that means.
That was the Zoom era. So
okay.
blocking that out.
Yes, I know. We were just talking about
Zoom.
Zoom was a tough tough pandemic. But anyway, she was talking about ethical non-monogamy. She was talking about the apps and ethical non-monogamy.
Yeah.
And that's the first time I've been married like almost 10 years. And that's the first time I had heard that term. But she was like, ethical. Have you guys heard of ethical? And then you were like ethical non-monogamy. And I'm like, everyone knows about this but me.
Nobody told Allison.
And Tony had been married. You had been divorced for a little bit by that point. But you were not yet in a relationship.
I was attempting to date, so I'd seen a lot of those like abbreviations that I would then have to be like, what does that mean? I have to Google
look it up. I know.
Well, it made me go, my God, I've been off the market and I've been an old married person for so long. I had no idea. The world has changed.
It has.
Anyway, I brought that. Oh yeah. You mentioned The Ethical Slut, which is like the Bible for ethical non-monogamy. And I found myself thinking I would like to read it because you talk about how it talks about NRE, new relationship energy.
Yeah.
And I was like, even as someone who's not really tempted to open up my marriage at this point, I'm interested to read this book because it sounds like it holds a lot of insight into just how relationships operate and things.
Yeah, I think I loved it, and it's been updated a couple of times. They've done like new versions. There's also, I think, Polysecure is a really great book as well about the about, relationship structures and attachment styles.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. So there's more than that out there now. There's another one called open monogamy. But I feel like I didn't have any of those resources when we opened our marriage in 2008, and there weren't dating apps.
Right.
And when they started coming out, they didn't add ethical non-monogamy to the drop-down menu till like 2015. And so it's been like, we had to kind of figure it out for a while.
I know why I brought it up, because being on the pedestal, I think, is new relationship energy.
Ah, yeah. Well, it doesn't have to be. I feel like when you've got like a really complete sense of self, I feel like that kind of dissipates some of the new relationship energy. Sometimes it comes in because you weren't feeling whole and somebody else filled you up.
Yeah, that's my 20s and into my early 30s.
I know. Well, that's me into my mid 40s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was trying to get someone else to like complete me. It's like that Jerry Maguire bullshit. Like, you complete me. Like that run if somebody says that to you.
That's what makes, for me, that's what made relationships with men like a drug for me. Because it was like, I'm not particularly happy in my life, and I don't know that I'm even aware of that, and I don't know how to begin to get and to do the XYZ. And then a guy pays attention to me, and all of a sudden it's like, I'm like
the dopamine hit.
Yes. And then this is actually what got me into therapy when I lived in New York. I had been in therapy a bit in California, and then I moved to New York, was not in therapy. And then someone said to me, the second you like a guy, you lose yourself. And it was so true. Like the words they made sense, but they didn't. But it was so true. Because all of a sudden, my entire attention was like, I was obsessed with maintaining his interest in me. And I mean, and then he said this, and then I said this, and then he said this. What do you think? I mean, it's just like,
no, and you went through that in your 20s, and a lot of women I talked to did. I didn't.
Right, because you had met your husband?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was with my previous boyfriend from age. I didn't really have a boyfriend until I was 19, and then I dated that guy from age 19 to 23, and then I met my husband.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I didn't date ever, and I hadn't gone through that process of figuring that stuff out. And so I did go through that stuff in my 40s. And, who's to say if you in your 20s maybe could have found a different way to do that? But isn't it interesting that so many women in their, teen years or 20s go through that process of dating kind of like the wrong guy or people who treat them poorly as a way to figure that, and it leads them closer to themselves.
Yeah.
I never did that. So maybe open marriage is really only like a very important thing if you get married super young or, if you've never done that. Because I got married at 26, which isn't like a baby, but I met him when I was 23. And I was pretty naive and naive about myself too.
But now you're sort of on the other side of that.
Yeah.
But you still have an open marriage.
That's true. So the guy I'm dating right now, I've been dating for over 3 years, and he's in an open marriage too. And what's lovely is, and then I have the occasional, nobody that's like casual, I would say, but I've dated enough people now that like I know. I've got people that like kind of come in and out of my life, and it doesn't always have to be sexual, but it's kind of like, oh, that could happen, which is fun when you're just like going out for dinner, like, oh, that could happen and it would be okay. There's some excitement to that. But my current boyfriend is very different from my husband in some ways and very similar in others. But part of what's fun is that, I just get to kind of flex different parts of myself with each of them. My boyfriend's like in hospitality, and we like go to really great restaurants around the city, and his wife lives in a different country. So I get to like kind of like have like the single Brooklyn experience at his place with his dog and whatever. And then I have like, I love my life with my husband, and I wouldn't want to move out.
I need to get a boyfriend who's in video editing. That's what my life needs.
Right? I know. Like if, and also, yeah, just like being cooked for, like he cooks for me sometimes. My husband I can't cook. He can't cook. There's like something so nice about that. And then my husband's girlfriend loves to go to Costco, and so does my husband. They're both like very suburban at heart, and so they like go off and do all the grocery shopping together. It's freaking amazing. So I'm like, we have these other people who enrich our lives and don't diminish from what we get from each other at this stage.
So just in terms of logistics, how do you figure out who sees whom when?
At this point, our kids are grown, they're 19 and 21. So I don't, and partly because I've gotten so like comfortable with being alone and being myself, like my husband and I make plans with each other as opposed to assuming the default is that you're going to be available for me all the time. Right. So if I'm like, oh, sweetie, will you come with me? Like I'm doing an open mic on Wednesday. Will you come? I'll be like, sure. And I'll put it in his calendar or whatever. But, and we have Saturday nights as kind of like the sacred date night. But if something comes up, it's not like I don't flip out anymore.
Right.
We just kind of work it out that way because also, but when you have kids, it's very different, right? And you have to like, when your kids are little and you have to like manage all of those things. So I think part of all the conflict we had early on was because of parenting at the same time, and it was, and I felt often like the mental work of planning fell to me. And in large part, that was because I'm better at it. And like, he's ADD and was not medicated at the time. Now he is. So at the time though, like he'd be like, yeah, we can do that Tuesday. And I'll be like, you are going to be in LA on Tuesday, or like, and he's like, I am, like, it's like his business partner is married to my best friend. That's how we met. So I would always like ask my best friend, when is Stuart traveling for work? You know what I mean? Because like he has no idea.
Right.
He's just bad at it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't malicious. He's just really bad at the planning part.
If you weren't, this is a thought experiment. If you weren't married to Stuart, might you be inclined to be married to like to your boyfriend?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I love my boyfriend. I think he's kind of married to his work. I think that's his like he owns.
That's his primary.
Yeah, he's in hospitality. He owns venues in Bushwick. He loves it, and like he likes to, he likes the possibility of being out at his club until 4 a.m. on Saturday. If you know what I mean. So like, I feel like I would still have my boyfriend as my boyfriend, but I might have another boyfriend. Like he's never been monogamous with anybody. Like
and does his wife date other people too?
Yeah, his wife is with someone. But they're like family still, you know what I mean? So even though I think I mentioned she lives out of the country. So, she lives with her partner. My boyfriend actually introduced the two of them to each other. So it's like a friend of his is her partner.
And she lives with him?
With her.
With her?
Yeah.
So she lives with a woman.
Yeah.
She's married to your boyfriend?
Yes. Yeah. I know.
And do they still have but they still have like an active marriage when they see each other as well?
I mean, I'm not going to like go into the details of their marriage, but they spend a couple of weeks together like 4 times a year. Okay. You know what I mean? And they're like each other's family. They look after each other's parents. They own businesses together.
Yeah. I see. So when you said they're like family before, I wasn't sure I understood, but now I get it.
Yeah. That, you know what I mean? Right. So it's like, even though she spends more of her time, they spend more of their time away from each other, but they don't ever want to get divorced.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're still like each other's primary person in lots of other ways.
In the book, you talk about at the beginning, you guys had a set of rules.
Yeah.
And then by the end, the rules had changed.
Yeah.
One of the rules being don't fall in love with anyone.
Right.
And then you realize that's not really something you can control. But at this point, what are their rules and what are they?
Yeah. And the initial rules, I really think they all boil down to no falling in love. Like every other rule, I think was designed to keep the love from happening, to try to,
for example, not spending the night,
not seeing, I don't know if I wrote this one in the book, but it was a rule like don't see the same person twice in 1 week. You know what I mean?
Remember,
it was, like, but like there were things that were about intimacy, you know? And now that I understand that I can't, not only can I love more than one person, but having a loving relationship outside of my marriage actually makes me love my husband more in some ways. And it kind of takes the pressure off in terms of our sex life too. Like my husband and I have a great sex life still, but as I write about in the book, there are some things that he wants that I don't like. And that gets tricky in monogamy. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, either I have to compromise my boundaries or you have to give up on this thing forever. And that's a rough ask for either person. So this way, both of us win, you know what I mean? In a way that's like really great. So all of the other rules have fallen aside. Our two main rules are to be honest with each other, but not in a like asking permission kind of way. It's like he wouldn't make plans on a Saturday because that's our date night without explicitly asking me, right? And I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, I think I'm going to go away for our anniversary weekend with my boyfriend, because you know what I mean? Like we respect, we give each other that respect to not do that, but we're generally very honest with each other about what's going on. The thing is, sometimes I still react, and like it happened early on when I would say, sure, you can do that. You can go out with this person. And then if he would come back and say, oh yeah, she was so funny, I just went out on this first date. And I'd be like, how dare you tell me she's funny? Like, I'm the funny one.
Yeah.
Like, God damn you, you know? And he would be like, what did I, you know what I mean? Like, I can't tell you anything. And we were having that argument over and over and over because I was insisting on his honesty and then getting angry at him every time he told me something I didn't like. So now our new rule is you need to be honest with me. You don't have to tell me every last detail, but if you tell me something that upsets me, you have to stay with me as I work out that emotion. You don't get to say you're being ridiculous and walk away. You have to like, this is the price of admission.
Right.
Right. So I'm going to have feelings of insecurity at times. I'm going to, feel jealous, all sorts of things are going to come up. Usually those are the two things, and they take a different form, but it's really I'm insecure or jealous or feeling like not attended to, or I'm upset about something else and I just lashed out at you for this. But you have to stay with me. You can't, it might, as I said, we're getting better at it. Might just take like 20 minutes now. I might need you to hold me. I might, and he used to say like, it's like you want me to hold you, but it's like asking like a porcupine being like, will you like fucking love me? You know what I mean? And it's like, but we've gotten so much better at me being able to tell him what I need and him being able to give me what I need. And that's the deal. And that's what's got to happen. And then every time, I mean, I can't think of an instance in the last several years where we didn't just like it, the anger that I was feeling didn't just like dissipate because it wasn't about what he was doing. It was about some feeling I had that I needed him to take care of me around.
Right. Of like abandonment or rejection.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
There's a quote that you mentioned a couple times in the book, and maybe it came from the Ethical Slut that remind me what it is. Like jealousy is
jealousy is the mask you wear to cover whatever else is going on with you right now. Something like that. Like it's a mask for other feelings.
Yes. And I was like, I love that. What does that mean?
Yeah. Right. Well, for me, for example, if I'm jealous, I might say, you are such a dick for like not feeding the cat before you went on a date. Like, how dare you expect me to do this? You're off having, and really, I'm feeling like pathetic or sorry for myself that I didn't have a date, or I'm worried that you love her more, or you know what I mean?
Kind of like I've heard this in a different, like in a career sense, that jealousy or envy shows you what you wish you had for yourself.
Yeah, that's in Elise Lonen's new book too.
Oh,
she
yeah.
just interviewed me at my LA event.
She's
I love
my
her.
old coworker, and I've had her on my show.
Yeah,
We used to work at Time Out New York together.
Oh, very cool. But like on her best behavior, she does about all the 7 deadly sins. So that envy chapter is so good. Like envy and lust and anger all really spoke to me. But the envy part, that when you are envious of another woman in the relationship too, it's showing what you want, right? And I think also partly I was jealous. Sometimes I was jealous of his feelings for another person, but sometimes I was jealous of his freedom. You know, that he had the freedom to, or he gave himself the freedom to, let's say, go out. And he would say, yeah, let's get a babysitter if you want to go out too. And I'd be like, no, I need to stay home and take care of the kids, even though they didn't necessarily really need me there. And once the kids stopped needing a babysitter and they actually would have a lot of fun, you might be able to start imagining this. And, you know, I saw your boys.
I got excited when I read that part in the book, like the idea of the two of them having, like, not wanting a babysitter because they want to stay home.
Yeah, they loved it when, like, my oldest would, you know, they would play video games, and that was how my oldest bribed my youngest to do all the things that I didn't have a chance of getting him to, like, jump into the bath. And, you know, he would, like, make him get into the bath and get on his pajamas and brush his teeth, and then they could play video games together. You know, I'm like, genius. And so my whole life opened up when I realized, I don't actually have to be standing over them all the time. And I think I had felt jealous that Stuart always gave himself permission to go do things. He would go to the gym on a Saturday morning, and I'd be like, it must be nice. And he'd be like, you can go to the gym if you want to. They have childcare at the Y. Why don't we just go? He wasn't saying, you go to the gym and I'll stay home, though. And for some reason, I thought that was like, no, we can't do that.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I made myself crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I'm just thinking, like, anyone listening, if your wife just had a baby, do not go to the gym.
Don't go to the gym.
Just don't at the beginning.
Yeah, right. If she can't go to the gym, nobody goes to the gym. Well, I've had guys, like, over the years on OkCupid or whatever, being like, oh yeah, you know, yeah, we've been in an open marriage for 2 years. My wife's pregnant now. Like, so she's not doing anything, but she says it's still cool for me. And I'm like, not cool. Nope. Yeah. And I've given that advice to men more than, I'm like, A, I'm not going to date you. B, I suggest you get off this app and stay off for 2 years. And if you want to still be married 2 years from now, you know, because I just don't think, I think there are enough things where the biology of motherhood is real if you're actually giving birth to your child, which is not always the case. But if you are giving up your body in that way, it's just not cool. Like, there's got to be a little bit more equity there. And so I have had guys come back 2 years later. Maybe they just still wanted to go out with me. I don't know. But they were like, you were right. I'm 2 for 2 though. I told 2 guys and they both came back later and said, like, that was a really good piece of advice.
It is.
Yeah.
Does it bother you, or how does it not bother you to picture or at the beginning, picturing your husband with another woman?
Oh, it really bothered me. It really bothered me.
Does it now?
It doesn't, but partly because I just don't picture it. You know what I mean? And that's also kind of a Byron Katie idea as well. She would say, like, it's none of your business what they do, you know what I mean? And I actually believe that now. I believe that, like, I don't picture my friends having sex either. You know what I mean?
Oh, I don't either.
You know, it's like, some people might, like, I also don't like to watch porn. That's like kind of a weird thing for me. But like, if I'm not part of it, I'm not really interested in it.
Right.
So, but that's just how I'm wired. So it's like, I now kind of choose what I'm going to think about or not think about. And it used to be like, I couldn't stop myself from thinking about it. And it was so horrifying to me. I think partly it doesn't bother me anymore because, and I don't have to like will myself so much, like, no, don't think about it. because I've got other things on my mind. I've got other storylines other than like what my husband's up to,
right?
You know, and B, we've had enough time now that it's like he continues to choose me and I continue to choose him. And we do still have a great sex life. And sometimes I'm like, I guess if I do start to picture that, sometimes what I will do is picture them doing the thing that I don't like doing and being like, and then I actually feel like they talk about compersion.
Yeah, you mentioned in the book, compersion is like the opposite of jealousy.
Opposite of jealousy.
You're happy for
your husband's or your partner's happiness. Sometimes for people it's a sexual thing where they get turned on by them being with, and I don't get turned on, but I do feel happy. I'm like, oh, that's nice. And maybe he's getting to like do the thing where he likes to like shout, you know, not nice words that I'm not going to say that make me super uncomfortable.
The C word.
The C word. And a lot of like, apparently there are women who love it. I'm not one of them, you know? And it's like for him, he would say, it just comes out. It's like Tourette's. He has like sex Tourette's. You know what I mean? And for him, it was like the effort it took to not say it would take him out of the moment.
That's so interesting.
And so like we've worked around that now. And it's like now that he has that release valve with other partners,
right?
I don't feel so responsible for it. I don't have to change my boundary. Has he said it a couple times in the last 10 years? Yes. Have I rolled with it? Yes. You know, it doesn't have the same kind of power it used to have, but that's just an example. So like if my mind starts going there, I'll be like, oh yeah, maybe he's doing that. And maybe they're both having a great time and like that does nothing for me. So I'm like, great, you know? And I've also met some of his partners and it's like, that's something that's ethical slut wisdom too. They recommend meeting partners so that you're not picturing some idealized version. And sometimes I do get like a wave of, especially, not all the women he dates are younger than I am. Some are. But, you know, as you age as a woman, I'm 51 now, part of me can get like, she's 40. She's so young. You know what I mean? And 40-year-old women, just know you are very young. But then I also remember like, God, would I ever want to be 40 again? No, 40 was rough. 51 is freaking amazing. And I am having the best sex of my life. So like, who am I to complain? You know, things are good.
Right. So in the book, and it turns out you find out that your mom had an affair from your aunt.
My aunt used the word affair.
Yes. And then, but after you've already opened, do I have the chronology right? After you've already opened up your relationship, you find out that it was kind of an open your mom had an open marriage as well.
Not exactly, because I found out about my mother when I was still when I had just newly pregnant with my first child. So my husband and I had done, as I said, like a couple of we did a couple sex clubs, a thing with a threesome, more like swingery stuff than actually an open marriage, and certainly not polyamory where we were actually loving other people.
Right.
So we had that conversation where he was like, you know, if you're attracted to someone, it's okay with me, just tell me. So when my aunt said your mother had an affair, it took me a year to confront my mother. And when I did, she told me, oh yeah, I asked, you know, does dad know? And she said, it was your father's idea. And so, but we didn't talk about it in detail. I was just like, whoa. So when I met Matt and started that, I thought back to, I knew this about my mother. And I was like, that's when I just kind of tiptoed into the conversation with her. But it was still hard for both of us to talk about. I think both of us had some shame around it. I think she felt, she's always, you know, she's a girl of the 50s. She was very similar to me in that, like, very, very good girl, very virginal when she got married. She was a virgin. I was just kind of virginal. And so it was hard for her to talk about sex, period. And for me, I wasn't feeling great about the way I was going about our relationships, whereas I knew my mother was still friends with one of her partners at least. And I kind of wanted that for myself, I realized. So we kind of tiptoed into the conversations, and I learned more as I revealed more about myself to her.
What do you make of the fact that you both have been in open marriages?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's like genetic per se, but I think that knowing what I knew about my mom was helpful to me in terms of deciding to pursue it for myself, because my parents are still married. They've been married for almost 60 years. They're very committed to each other. And now what I know is that, you know, they still maintain friendships with their previous like intimate partners. They're not sexual relationships anymore, but and I think there's something so beautiful about that. And I had this luxury of when I was starting to explore this idea of having desire outside of my marriage, and my husband was encouraging me, and I knew the same thing had happened for my parents. I was able to ask my mom, like, will this blow up my marriage? And she would say, oh no, sweetie, it's fine. Like, just keep talking to each other. You'll be fine. And her certainty about that, I mean, just imagine, like, you know. Right.
That, yeah, I'm kind of wondering if perhaps it was a door you were more inclined to open because there was this model, a stamp of approval in a sense.
I think so. And a model of a marriage that I respected. Like there were parts of their marriage that I didn't want for myself, but that I think also still kind of like the gendered roles. But I think I was emulating that in my own marriage as well. I hope I've broken that mold a bit with my sons. You know, I think part of when people worry like, oh, but what about your kids? I'm like, I want my sons. They don't know, you know, well, my oldest has read the book, so he knows more details than he wants to. But he said he kind of skipped over the nitty gritty parts is what he talked about. And my youngest has not read it, but like they know that I am a whole person, and they're proud of me for writing the book. And they have seen into my messy side more than my mother ever allowed me to see. And I think that's important. I think if you show your kids a less sanitized version of yourself, they will show a less sanitized version of themselves to you. And that creates stronger bonds, I believe.
I want to ask about the Mahikari.
Yeah.
I want to ask about that. And then I also want to ask about adapting this for the screen.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about both.
Yeah.
So your mom I had never heard of Mahikari, and I don't really know much about it. Can you explain that?
I mean, I wish I could. It's like, what I know of it is there's a branch of it that made its way to America, and it's called Mahikari of America. And that
in what, like the 60s?
I think it was more in the 70s, okay. But I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. It's sometimes called Tsukio Mahikari. And if you look it up today on Google, which I have done, some people call it a cult and some people do not. My mother and I still disagree about this.
You think it is and she doesn't?
Yeah, exactly. But there are also people who are like arguing with their parents about whether Catholicism is a cult. You know what I mean? It's like, it's up for debate, in my opinion. What she would agree with me about now is that she should not have asked me. She asked me to join when I was 10, and I did. And that was, and there was something about my discovering, and she got into it initially because of a partner of hers, right?
Was your dad in it?
No. Okay. He actually joined when I was in college, and that freaked me out. And now both of them are no longer members. But it was like, I was like, you too? But he was doing it to support her. Right. I did it to support her. And I think what we've talked about since is like, she was seeking, she was kind of searching for something outside of herself, and her open marriage journey and her spiritual journey kind of like overlapped. And that's all well and good. But what upset me as an adult is that she brought me into it as a child, and she sees that now. In her defense, she really thought it was the best thing. And she was like, oh, I was spreading light and whatever, right? And like, I feel like there are a lot of ways in which people can slip into that now too. Like, for example, I do not feel like transcendental meditation is a cult, but I do TM. And I I have been very careful not to force my kids to do TM, but my older one did learn when he was 18, though. And he asked me if he could learn, and I paid for his like course. And now he sometimes does it and sometimes doesn't, and that's fine. But it's like I'm very hyper attuned to like own, like I think that's a big reason why I never wanted to tell my kids about this, and then they ended up finding out because I was
about the open marriage.
Yeah, because I was just like, I can't ever make my thing their thing. I wanted to like shield them from myself. And I think there's a middle way that is healthier than complete repression and complete being like, no, you can't see any part of me. I'm just here as a mother figure.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm relating so much to this.
Yeah, or the part of like, sometimes I'm going to get mad at you, and sometimes I'm going to do things that are not necessarily in your best interest, but you'll be fine, and I need to do this for me. You know, like it's like that constant push-pull. And I think I don't think we do our kids any favors by going too far in either direction. I think we're all clear that like, yeah, you can't just like do whatever the fuck you want and leave them with an empty refrigerator when they're like 4 years old. Like that's negligence and abandonment and cruelty. But also you don't have to, and you shouldn't for their sake, subjugate every piece of yourself in their interest, because what's really in their interest is for you to model what healthy adulthood looks like. And I think that's kind of where I've landed now. And hopefully I figured it out in time. I think they're both really good kids, and I'm very proud of them. And I'm also trying to like, I didn't use their real names in the book. I'm trying to like kind of keep them out of the book life. And they are so involved in their own lives right now. Just think, when you were like 19 or 21, how much time did you spend thinking about what your mother was up to? And probably like not much, right? So that is my hope for them, that they are spending very little time thinking about what I'm up to.
So the book has been optioned. Yeah. And you guys are in the process now of adapting it, or where? And when how's all that going?
Yeah, I shouldn't say this, is like Michelle and Izzy will kill me. It has not been optioned yet.
Oh, okay.
I have a shopping agreement with 2 women who I guess I can just say their names, right? I know.
So I've mentioned my good friend Izzy, who I've mentioned before on the show.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Yeah, she's one
of the women who's working on it to shop it around. And what's been really fun about that, and there is, because then it hit the New York Times bestseller list. The book came out January 16th. We made our pitch deck in October of 2022. Like, oh, wow. You know, we've been very excited about it for a while. But then, you know, it takes a while for the book to come out and for all the publicity to hit. And then once it hit the New York Times bestseller list. Now all of a sudden, like, all these people are reading it. It's super exciting. But it was really fun working on the pitch deck, and it could still morph into different directions depending on where it goes. But just the freedom to be like, oh, this is based on the memoir. It's not like, in a memoir, I can't make shit up, right? In a TV show, one of them, I think it was Michelle's idea, was like, instead of having 2 sons, what if you had 2 daughters, and we make this more of a story, because we've got the story of your mom and yourself. And then like, I'm like, oh my God, can one of them be named Lila, please? Because like, that was my girl name and I never got to use it. And now, and my boys are like, thank God I am not going to be like in this TV show, you know, and who knows what'll actually happen when it gets, but just that freedom to like, be like, what is the story I want to tell? When you're living a life and telling a memoir, I have to tell, this is what happened. And most of it you can't make up. Like when I told Izzy and Michelle, for example, about the Mahakari storyline for my mother, or like my mother gave her lovers nicknames of Jesus and Buddha, they were like, no. And you know, they're like, okay, who is going to be Buddha in this like pitch? You know what I mean? And it's like, often truth is stranger than fiction, and you can't make this stuff up. Right. But to have the flexibility to like tell the story I want to tell is very cool. And it's important to me to be invested in part of this process, because it is my life. It's still based on my life, and I want to help give it shape. But it's really exciting to be at this stage.
Is it what's the format?
We're pitching it as a TV show, but I think it could also go. But like film. A comedy? What do you mean? Or... Yeah, I mean, come on, it's funny, right? Like, I feel like there's no way. I feel like sex has to be funny to be real. You know, if like good sex is funny, bad sex is funny. Like sex is funny.
It is,
you know,
yeah.
Realistic sex is funny, unless it's scary, right? And they're right. It's like
true.
It's like it's either funny or scary,
right? Oh God.
So we're not writing a horror piece. So I do want it to be funny, and I think, you know, my husband Stuart he used to do stand-up comedy. He's hilarious. I fancy myself kind of funny. A lot of our situations we found ourselves in were hilarious, and I do have another book I'm working on now that tells like the next 2 years from 2018 to 2020, which is a whole other can of worms. Like, so more takes place in 3 parts, and we've kind of pitched that as 3 seasons. The part 1 is season 1, because it's kind of a different cast of characters in each part. It tells the story of 10 years, so it's like really over time. And then the seasons 4 and 5 might be the next book. And maybe I'm living season 6 right now. I don't know. But yeah, we're thinking kind of, but I don't know if it's an hour long, if it's half hour. I mean, it's going to kind of depend on where it lands.
Right. How
which
exciting.
Would be good. It is super exciting.
Okay, let's switch gears. And now let's do Just Me or Everyone.
Sometimes I ponder on something I have thought or done. Is it just me or everyone?
Okay, so this is the segment where people share things they think or do, and they wonder, is it just me or everyone? Do you happen to have one?
Oh my God. This is embarrassing. I do New York Times puzzles on the toilet.
That can't be just you.
Obviously. Is that too normal? Should I come up with something else?
I mean, if you have another one, sure.
Yeah. Okay. What's something I do? Okay, it might take 3 or 4 tries for me to get one that's like really good, because like the one that's coming, like the ones that come to my head aren't necessarily like amazing, right?
That's okay.
I am so insane about tennis tournaments. Like I love the major tournaments like Wimbledon, Australian Open. I will sometimes avoid leaving my house during especially like semifinals and finals in case someone might tell me spoilers, because I have them
This
taped.
is a good one.
Okay, because like, and when my kids were little and I was teaching full time, I would just like tape everything. I would, again, like sleep very little because I would like stay up all night watching these matches. And then if I heard anybody even say like if somebody's name was Dennis in the room and I thought maybe someone had said tennis, I would be like, la, 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 la. And I'd like scream at people. Once my department chair at school said, "Oh, did you watch the Murray match?" And I was like, fuck you. I didn't know if he made it past the quarters, and now I know he's in the semis. How dare you? You know what I mean? And this is like my boss. And it was like, I just like saw red. So I don't know if other people do that.
I don't do that because I'm a person who I read the last page. I don't mind spoilers.
Oh, I'll
read a synopsis, and I'm not into sports. But I'm sure you're not the only one. I feel like there's a lot of people who like will DVR games. And
and it's like 2 weeks at a time is the problem. It's like my kids will be like, "Oh my God, it's the French Open. I like, can we leave and go live somewhere else for a while?" But yeah.
I've never done it with tennis, but I've definitely done it with certain. I used to be more into football, but yeah, I'll do it with wrestling sometimes. I'll do it with even TV shows if I'm like super into a TV show.
Yeah.
I'll even like go so far as to like block certain people on social media for a little while just because I'm like, I don't want to absentmindedly just open something and see it. Yeah.
Here's one that happened too when I was on the dating apps. I'm not really doing that these days, but it was in my profile that I love tennis. And so I went in to I got a message from someone and they said something in their message to me that was a spoiler. And so I who knows, maybe this man would have been like a lovely partner for me, but I will never know because I was like, fuck you. How dare you tell me what just happened? Now I'm blocking you. And I hope you're happy. You ruined my day. And meanwhile,
that's honest.
he's just like another tennis fan. But like I get like my friends know me now. Like they're like, she is really scary. Like everybody kind of avoids me it's like 8 weeks of the year too. It's like a lot of time.
Do you play tennis?
I do, but not very well. But like I like that. My husband and I do play. And
you said your celebrity crush was Andre Agassi.
Oh God. I mean, there have been several. Andre Agassi then got replaced by Nadal. And now I hope Nadal is back. I don't know if he's going to be, but I like the balding scrappy guys. Yeah, that's like I like a husky build.
My friend Wendy revealed on the show that she had a crush. Do you remember? Young John McEnroe.
Really?
I was like, yeah, that was my reaction too.
Wow.
I didn't know anyone had a crush on him.
I bet he didn't know anybody had a crush on him. She should give him a call.
Yeah.
He'd be like, but she's like, not now.
Probably not now.
Yeah. But I love Alcaraz now too, but he's way too young for me. I do. I have a firm lower limit.
What is it?
You know what?
Is it half plus 7?
I think half plus 7 is a good rule, but that for me now is like 34, which seems really young.
Yeah.
You know, for like a fling, I can see, but something long term, I don't think that would work. I think I'd be bored.
Let's do Podcast Pals product picks.
Podcast Pals product picks. Love it. This is so exciting. Because I just like got signed, to do this. So I didn't have time to like listen. So I didn't know about all these segments.
Wonderful. Okay. We're going to wing it.
Okay. It's exciting.
Yes. So this is where you share with us products that you love.
Oh.
That you use. Either things you use daily or just things you just love, things you just discovered. It really can be anything. It could be like technology, skincare, hair products, makeup.
Sure.
Nothing like that. It could be something in the kitchen.
I love chapstick.
That's
like
great.
I just bought like another 3-pack because there are some of my jackets have some pockets without a chapstick in them. I need a chapstick, right? It does. It makes sense.
It just makes sense. Now, we're just like the black tube, just regular
blue. But it can't be medicated. It can't be the light blue one. It has to be the darker blue with some SPF in it.
Oh, that's what that one has.
Yeah. But the medicated one is too much. The black one is too waxy.
Yes.
I don't know.
I feel like it's not soft at all.
Yeah. So it's got to be a black one. And then in terms of makeup, I made this discovery pretty recently, and this is kind of gross, but I'm going to share it. I got this sty in my eye last summer, and I had to throw out all of my like mascara. I had like kind of fancy mascara, but like it was getting gross. Like I hang out on way too long. And so then I was looking up hypoallergenic mascara and eyeliner, and I found Burt's Bees.
I didn't know they make mascara and eyeliner.
Burt's Bees makes eyeliner and mascara, and it is better than a lot of other really expensive ones, in my opinion.
This is a shock. This is shocking.
I mean, I'm glad that I'm, because I think they're like an ethical company too. I think they're like a good company, and they're not that expensive.
Right.
And it is hypoallergenic. And now I am a big believer. I'm a convert.
All right.
Yep.
Got it. Burt's Bees, mascara and eyeliner.
Yep. And a dark blue chapstick.
Dark blue chapstick.
Yeah. Yep.
What else?
For food, I love, does it have to be a product that other people can like easily access?
Not really.
Okay. Well, if you're ever in Brooklyn, in Park Slope, go to Cafe Martin on 5th Avenue. My friend does own it. But also, I go there every morning almost, especially mornings that she's working there. She works there like 5 mornings. First of all, she has the best matcha. Like she gets it from Japan, and it is the best. And she makes it with almond milk and honey, and it's so good. And then she has these vegan banana nut gluten-free muffins. I'm not vegan, but I'm gluten-free. They're amazing. And then she steams her hard-boiled eggs. She has like a little steamer, and she gets them from the food co-op, which is like everyone in Park Slope except me belongs there. And they're like, it's like the best produce. And so you can get steamed hard-boiled eggs, these gluten-free muffins, and a matcha latte, and it's the best breakfast. That's Cafe Martin on 5th Avenue in Park Slope.
Excellent. I'm trying to think. Anything else? Anything that like relates to having an open marriage? What could it be, though?
Right, exactly. I mean, I'm kind of like, I'm not super into toys and lube and things like that. Oh, I mean, how graphic?
As graphic as you
do you want me to get?
As graphic as you want.
Okay. There is this blanket on Amazon that's like a pet blanket.
A pet blanket?
It's like one of their more popular blankets, like for people with like dogs.
Oh, okay.
I use it as a sex blanket. You know what I mean? Like when you've got the fluids or you've got period or whatever, it comes in a brown or a dark blue.
Okay.
I find it very useful. And so
This is great.
I bought one for home and then I made my boyfriend buy them too. And then I have one more just in case I ever end up on the go somewhere. They're the best.
Now, what makes them pet grade?
They're just very waterproof.
Okay.
So I guess like if your dog like pees on things, I think that's what they're designed for.
Got it.
That it's like protective of your furniture.
Interesting.
Or your bed, in my case.
I have found puppy pads were very helpful postpartum. And that's pretty much what they use at the doctor's office, except I don't think they're actually ones for dogs, but like they're always laying those pads down. I feel like they gotta be kind of the same thing.
Yeah, but these ones can like go in the wash.
Right.
Easily. And I do, because I'm like perimenopausal, I get night sweats too. So sometimes I just sleep on one. Like that's why I do have more than one in rotation, but I wash them immediately.
Can we talk about the night sweats? Okay.
I know. That's a whole other thing.
They have just started for me.
I'm sorry. May I ask how old you are?
I'm 48.
Oh, wow. You look great.
Thank you.
I was going to guess like 41.
Thank you. But
and that's only because you've clearly like lived enough to be this cool. Otherwise, I would have guessed in your 30s based on how you look.
Stop.
You're gonna be on every week, I think.
Oh my God. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Okay, but they just started. That's good. Mine started when I was 41.
So here's the thing though. I was waking up every morning, like just
drenched.
Yes, so gross. Like I have to change the bed and the mattress pad and everything. I've soaked through.
I'll text you what these doggy blankets, because they double. That's what I bought it for originally for my night sweats, and then I was like, oh, this makes a really good sex blanket too.
So, but then I adjusted thermostat so that it doesn't come on unless it goes below 65, and now they've stopped.
Oh, okay.
So
that's
I'm
good.
like, maybe those weren't night sweats.
I don't know if you're like soaking everything. That sounds like I don't get them all the time.
What are yours like?
I mean, they come and go. I've literally been in perimenopause for 10 years, and it's just like I'm over it. Apparently, it can last up to 13 years.
Oh my God,
that's like the upper limit, and I'm convinced.
Still, if I may, do you still have a period?
Yes, that's why it's still perimenopause. It's so annoying.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes I've had nights where I've had to change 2 or 3 times during the night.
That happened to me a couple times.
Yeah, it's like horrifying, you know, and then it's just so disruptive. Now I tend to only get them if I'm about to get my period, which is helpful because I don't get it every month anymore.
I was having them and then I got my period. Yeah, maybe it was.
So sometimes it's just like a hormonal, like I think of perimenopause. Sorry for all of this information.
That's all right. I've worked here for years.
You
now.
must be used to it. Okay. I think it's good for men to know like what we go through. I think of it as like almost like an everything must go sale for your body. you're just like getting wrung out, and the periods get weird too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mine are sort of like not like sometimes they'll be regular, and then sometimes I'll go a few months without one, and they're also like very heavy sometimes. And
you're like, I'm not making light of miscarriage, but I'm like sort of like, did I just,
right? What just happened?
Yeah, it's like crazy.
What I don't understand is I'm a very light sleeper. So why? How long? Like I'll wake up like, how long have I been sweating? Like,
right?
Why did I not wake up at the beginning of being?
Or did
uncomfortably
it just,
warm?
Or did it just go like
sprinkler? I don't understand it.
I don't.
And
either.
it's mostly it started, and it was mostly just my crotch. I was like, what?
Yeah. Sometimes
so
I'll just my underwear I need to change, and up top it's dry.
Right. That's how it started. Just primarily just a crotch sprinkler action.
Sometimes I'll get just like one armpit. And like one armpit will smell terrible when I wake up. And I like was clean when I went to sleep.
Right. Yeah.
And then I wake up and I reek, but just on one side.
That hasn't happened to me, but I look forward to that. But then the most recent one was like the back of my neck.
Yeah,
and
your
like
hair.
down my spine.
Yeah, it's like you've just been to the gym and you have like that sweat at the back of your head.
Yeah. It's so...
I know.
And I'm not like a big sweater in general because I don't move around a lot. I try not to.
Yeah, right. Like just stay very still.
Yeah, I'm like beyond sedentary. Not really, but you know. But yeah, so waking up, it's the most my body has ever sweat.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
And then you're like, how is there any moisture left in me? Yeah. You know? I do drink a lot of water.
Good.
You know, let's drink to that right now. We've got
cheers to
drinks.
that.
I know, seriously. Let's hydrate everybody. Even Tony's
I'll join in.
I know. It makes you thirsty to talk about being so sweaty.
But for now, the thermostat trick but it might just be like a Band-Aid. We'll see where it goes.
Here's the thing, too. In my 10 years of dealing with this shit, and my period was always weird since it started when I was 12. I've never had.
Oh, you've never had normal periods?
I mean, only when I was on the pill.
Okay.
Which sucks.
I hated the pill.
Yeah, I hate the pill too, but that's all it was. Anyway, the point is it goes, it comes, things change.
Mm-hmm.
Like just when you think you've got a handle on it, it can go in a different direction. I don't know. It's nothing comforting to tell you.
Yeah.
But I think it's preferable, I think it's preferable to hot flashes during the day.
Yes.
Have you had any of those?
Maybe like once or twice.
Yeah.
So
I have them very infrequently, but like I used to like do these teacher trainings and they'd be like 6 hours long and I'd be like in front of a group and like, and all of a sudden I'd be like, Jesus Christ. Yeah. Like I would just have to like, so I always wear a tank top underneath whatever else I'm wearing. I've got one on right now because I never know when I'm going to just have to like take it off and be free.
Right.
And that's like harder to do and look professional at the same time.
There are hormones and things that you can take to like even it out, right?
That's what I've heard. And part of me, like, here's the thing. For me now, because my period is irregular, the night sweats are a pretty good predictor that it's coming. Mm-hmm. And then I know to be prepared. Right. Like, I'd almost rather have that. Mm-hmm. And then maybe it would take care of other things. I don't know. I was also on the pill for a very long time. So I feel like I pumped a lot of hormones into my body. And I kind of want to be off those.
I emailed my doctor and then my gynecologist. And then his assistant called and said to make an appointment. But then I had just figured out the thermostat trick. So I'm like, I'm good.
That's always what happens to me too. Like it'll be really bothersome and then I'll ask a question and then there'll be like one more step I have to take and then it won't happen for a few months.
Right. I'm sure it'll happen again and then I'll go in to see what's up.
I know I have friends who have done things that have helped. Maybe I'm just too lazy.
What it was?
I can't remember.
There's some like, listeners, if anyone knows what we're talking about, I've heard of women being on hormone pellets. Have you heard this?
Pellets?
Yeah.
That's like a rabbit.
Right. They take a little bit of rabbit food and they stick, and then and there's actually like pellet therapy for men too. It's like
why does it have to be a pellet?
That was my feeling because I read about it and I watched this video where they use like, I think it's called a trocar or something. It's this it's essentially like a gigantic needle that's hollow.
Do you shoot it up your nether parts?
No. They shoot it in your butt cheek.
Ooh.
Yes.
Oh, I wouldn't like that.
No. Oh. For a man, they put it in the butt cheek. For a lady, I don't know where it goes. But yes, my whole thing was like, is there some other way we can do this? Like a pill because I just don't want some giant straw stuck in my butt and then a pellet shot in. It sounds horrible.
It doesn't sound pleasant. Mm-mm. I know. None of it's pleasant.
It isn't pleasant.
It just isn't pleasant. I had an idea that what if we could find a way that it wouldn't be a hysterectomy? It would be, what if we could repurpose our uterus as a second bladder?
Yes.
Why has nobody figured that out?
Yes,
like
that
a
is
little
genius.
I know.
There's a point in the book where you say ever since kids, it takes you like multiple like whatever's to empty your bladder.
Yeah, like I can't, like
Yeah,
sometimes I feel like I have to pee, but I can't pee.
Or I'll pee and stand up and be like, I still have to pee a little more.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. But like, what if there was like some connector?
That's right. A urinary bypass.
Yeah, just like
Bladder bypass.
extra bladder.
Yeah.
Like I don't need my uterus anymore.
Mm-hmm. No, nor do I.
I'm just saying.
It's a great idea.
Thank you.
It's a
Thank
genius
you.
idea. I have a genius idea.
Let's hear it.
It's unrelated.
Okay.
And I'm going to give this away for free.
Wow. Mine, you have to at least footnote me if you decide to make the bladder bypass.
You know,
I would like some credit.
Right.
At least call it the Molly bag
Right.
or something.
The Molly bag. You know, I feel like me saying I'm going to give it away for free is like you saying you don't care if your husband brings his girlfriend to the house when you actually did care. So I take it back. I do care. I'm not giving this away. This is mine. But if anyone wants to do something with it, just get in touch. I feel like remember TV dinners from our youth?
Like the Swansons? With
Yes. With the like
partitions.
Yes, and then it had like the little like fruit compote or brownie or some disappointing dessert in the center. Fruit compote was perhaps the most disappointing.
Yes.
Someone should redo that. Make like high-end TV dinners. That's it. That's the idea. High-end TV dinners, but it'd be like an homage to the TV dinners of our youth.
But better.
But yes. So it'd be sort of like factor meals or like something like, ready to, you put them in your refrigerator or your freezer and it's, what's the word I'm going for?
Microwavable still?
Bespoke is the word I'm going for.
Bespoke.
It's artisanal and it's curated and it's high-end. But it appeals to us. Yeah, it could be microwavable, sure. Because I rely on my microwave.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Because I don't want to have to dirty a pan.
No, it's the same. It's the same, but it's just instead of like Swanson's frozen dinner, it's delicious food, but it's nostalgic.
I like that because I've done things.
I'm going to work on my pitch.
I've done things with like, there's this thing called Kettlebell Kitchen that I did like through my gym, but it was like paleo.
Right.
It wasn't good.
No.
It was like.
This is nostalgia.
Yeah. And I wanted to taste really good.
That's what I'm saying.
Too. And this was just kind of like, I don't know, it was just like always kind of similar flavors.
Right.
Really what I would really like is a personal chef who makes me food and then cleans afterwards.
This is like that minus the chef and the cleaning.
Really what I want, I've often said like, I would like a wife.
I feel like you're like in the right pool for getting something like that.
I know. No. This is why I do have like the boyfriend who cooks is clutch. I need that.
Yeah.
You need someone in your life to pamper you and take care of you. And my husband tries. He's just not a good cook.
But now you have one, so
yeah, I'm
you're
good.
all set.
I'm all set. All set.
Molly, it was so nice talking to you.
So fun talking to you.
So
you are
much.
my new best friend.
Thank you.
How did you know?
That I was going to be your new best friend?
Yeah.
I just had a feeling. I just had a feeling. I would like to tell everyone I'm on Patreon. Patreon.com/Allison Rosen. Check it out. There's episodes of The Friend Zone, my bonus Patreon podcast. There's a level where you can text me and I'll text you back. All sorts of behind the scenes content, access to me and more. Patreon.com/Allison Rosen. Go for an annual subscription and get 2 months free.
Wow.
15% off. And then also I'm on Substack. You're on Substack
I'm
too,
on
right?
Substack. Yeah, I'm new to Substack.
I started it a couple years ago, but then I didn't do anything with it. And it's just recently I've been telling the story of how I found it's a long, insane story of not knowing I was Jewish until after college and then finding out. Yeah. And so I've been telling it in little installments. And I've been enjoying, I've never written about it before, so I've been enjoying writing about it. So AllisonRosen.substack.com. And then also my book was re-released for the 5-year anniversary with new material, tropical attire, and courage and other phrases that scare me. You can get to all of this, Allison'sLinks.com.
I like that title.
Thank you. And make sure you get more, A Memoir of Open Marriage.
Thank you.
Tell them, plug anything else you'd like to plug.
No, I mean, you can find my book. You can find links to my Substack and other things on my website, which is mollyrodenwinter.com. And there's only like 5 Substacks I've written so far, but I'm writing about the journey of putting this book into the world because it's been kind of madness. So I just do one like every 2 weeks because just to like give updates on like, okay, this is the crazy thing that's happening now.
I need to catch up on it.
They're quick reads. I'm writing them like they're like 5 minutes to read, you know?
Elise Lunan, I think, was like 5 paragraphs.
Yeah.
Mine are, I feel like, are longer, but they're still fairly short. So
yeah.
Tony, what about you?
Same old stuff right now. Instagram at
Tony Thaxton
and Bizarre Albums every Tuesday. I do have some shows coming up eventually, but it's too far away right now.
Wait,
All
what
right.
kind of shows? Can I
He's
ask?
a rock musician.
Rock musician. Ooh, what do you play? What do you do?
Drums.
Drums. Nice.
He's in a band called Motion City Soundtrack.
Oh, I feel like I've heard of that.
You might have.
It's possible.
It's possible. All right, I'm going to check you out.
He has a gold record.
Whoa. All right. Okay, definitely checking you out.
Second one coming.
And he's got a second one. But I like to
Damn.
pretend that his gold record is fake because it might just be fake. What is it actually painted in?
What is it actually painted in?
Yeah, like the gold record that I saw on Zoom, like that has no real gold on it, right?
Oh yeah, it's 24 karat. Yeah, I don't know.
Fake.
Yeah. No.
Gold. It could be gold plated.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't know. I don't know. I just am stoked to have
Listen,
one.
I've got a small bone to pick with you.
What now?
On the episode with Daniel and me, where we wondered if there was a band called Therapy. And then there was. And then I played it. And then he's like, I don't like this. The drums sound too thin. And then I said, I think that's because they're using a piccolo snare. I think.
That sounds like you know things.
I mean, I don't know if I do or not.
Okay, well,
So-
it's convincing me.
And then I wanted Tony to weigh in on whether that's a thing, and that might be why the drums sound thin. And I said to play a drop to let me know. And then you played the Tony Thaxton drop, which was
course I
so predictable.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I do it, because I know it's just going to drive you nuts.
It did drive me nuts. But was I right or not? Your job is not on the line.
I don't
Do you
know,
know?
for sure.
But
I'm
is
not,
a piccolo snare a term?
Yeah, it is. It is a snare. They're much thinner. They're not as deep
I think
as
311 does use one.
I believe so. Yeah. It could be. I'm not. I don't really nerd out on gear too much, so I'm not positive.
Okay.
It seems like it was walking a line. I could see it going either way. It could just be a snare cranked up really tight.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Very diplomatic again.
It's so annoying.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was
Thank
delightful.
you.
Listeners,
A lot of fun.
Thank you for listening. I love you. You matter. Goodbye.
Hey, do you know about the Allison Rosen show?